There's two actually categories of this. There's access to care and there's spectrum of care. Access to care, at least in my definition, how we operate with vet triage means simply that accessing a veterinarian, a professional that you need for regardless of what the extent of care is, just access to a professional who's knowledgeable, who knows what to do and who can answer your questions. Spectrum of care is the breadth of the care you need. So a great example of that is going to be if you need a veterinary specialist, so somebody who's a lot less available nationally speaking. There it's harder to come by specialists, and because there are fewer of them than general practitioners, they're also usually booked out for weeks or months or longer. And so we've gotten into a trap with both these categories with pet owners, because not only they don't have access to care, they can't find a veterinarian, they certainly are having a hard time finding spectrum of care as well. So those are two challenges we're trying to face with the platform to help pet owners out. Oh, it's a massive problem, and certainly other than inking individuals in the U.S., obviously Spanish speaking is I presume the second most popular language, whether you're bilingual or only speak Spanish, and it's an issue, and it's a multifactorial issue. There's an embarrassment factor on both parties, on both sides. If you only speak Spanish and you go to any veterinary clinic or emergency hospital in the U.S., chances are they're only going to speak English, and it's embarrassing on both parties. The professional doesn't like it. They can't translate what they need to translate to the Spanish-speaking pet owner, and the Spanish-speaking pet owner who's already stressed out and freaked out about their pet. What's the prognosis? What's the cost? They're embarrassed by it. It's just an awkward situation. And usually in brick and mortar, because I've been in this situation a fair amount, you try to find somebody in your building, in your hospital, that can speak the language, whether it's a front desk staff member or a kennel person or a technician, somebody. And likewise, the family member, usually you're relying on their children. They could be less than a teenager, 8, 9 years old, to interpret what the parents are trying to say. So there's an embarrassment factor to it. There's also cultural factors as well. Every culture has their own perception of a worth of animals, and what level of care they're willing to devote to an animal. It's not right or wrong. There's just differences between cultures, and so that also amplifies the difficulties when you're trying to express what this particular pet needs as far as testing, treatment. What's the prognosis? Is it worth it? What do you and your family want to do? Knowing those factors, and so that also comes into play when you talk about the difficulties that language barriers have on the medical side. And then there's the reality of it. If you're dealing with a pet, it doesn't matter if they have a complex medical condition or a simple one, and there's an added barrier of language there, the veterinary professional is not going to be as keen to go into the details of that medical condition, right? Because there's already all these challenges in place. And so they're going to try and sort of band-aid the situation, get that pet owner and pet out of the facility quickly. They've got other emergencies coming through. They're already booked out, and then you amplify the fact that there's a language barrier. It's human nature to not want to deal with anything that's more challenging than your day to day. So that's the ugly reality of it. If you want optimal care with a veterinarian, a medical professional who's going to literally devote the same level of attention to that person, regardless of what language they speak, you've got to find a way to break down those barriers. And then it becomes a seamless, much more enjoyable interaction between those parties involved. So those are just some of the challenges that we have when you have a language barrier. And that doesn't matter whether you're talking about in person or on a platform like Vet Triage, it's virtual. It doesn't matter. Any interaction like that, where there's a pet's medical condition involved, there's stress involved, there's finances involved, there's cultural reasons, and all this stuff jumbled together causes a problem. So it's important to try and figure this issue out.